Okay, great. All right, so welcome everyone. My name's Catherine Salgado. I'm the primary advisor for DAAD Rise here at ASU. My name's Catherine, but feel free to call me Katie. I've been doing this for about 8 years now, advising on DAAD, and I'm super excited to have another cycle chat with you guys about the program, what it entails. So today's webinar, it's going to go by real fast. We have an hour. The first half of it, we'll spend most of the time talking through some eligibility things, what you can expect, what the application looks like, frequently asked questions, that sort of thing. And then in the second half of today's session, we actually have two of our RISE alumni as well. And so they're going to share a little bit about their experiences from the past summers, this past summer and this 2 summers ago. Tell you a little bit about their projects, what internship they ended up doing, and it'll be a nice Q&A session. And so we'll kind of end on that. So before we get going on DAAD specific things, I do want to kind of give you the scoop on what our office is all about. So you might have received an email from me or seen a posting on Inner Circle or something like that. And DAAD is an amazing program, and it's one of the programs that falls under the purview of ONSA, which is the Office of National Scholarship Advisement. So if you've not yet heard of our office before, welcome. I'm really excited to have you and tell you more about it. Our office is a little bit different than, a financial aid office or study abroad office, for example. All of the programs that we work with are highly, let's say, highly international. They're all nationally competitive in the sense that when you apply to one of the programs under our purview, your application is typically being read on a national level, right? Your application is being considered against other students from other universities in the US, as well as potentially ASU students. So this is really cool, right? Because a lot of folks don't really expect to get kind of one-on-one advising. Usually you get like an email blast, you see an opportunity, and you just apply for it. I'd say that that's like 90% of the things that might come through your inbox. Our office is a little bit different. So we actually help you apply to these kinds of awards from start to finish, starting with intake, starting with saying, hey, because of your major, you might find this interesting. And then once you get into the application, actually the bulk of our advising is on your application materials, providing feedback on any sort of written essays that might be required. If you apply to a program that requires an interview, for example, DAAD doesn't typically require an interview, but if you apply to any of the programs on our website, we'll do mock interviews. And in general, we're here to support your personal, professional, and academic growth. So really consider if you're new to ONSA, if you're new to working with our office, use our resources. That's what we're here for. That's what all of our advisors get paid to do, is to help you apply to these kinds of programs. And ASU students do phenomenally well because of the resources that we provide. So, as I mentioned, national scholarships a little bit different. When people hear the word scholarship, they just think money. But I'd say the primary thing that's really driving the programs that we advise on are the fact that, one, they're fully funded. So these kinds of opportunities are once in a lifetime, in the sense of, yes, they pay for airfare, they pay for housing, they give you a stipend, etc. And even though the money part is obviously a good thing, it's exciting, the part that's actually the best about the programs that we work with is the life-changing part, right? We say money is one of the things that we talk about, and it's nice to have that covered, but it's rarely the main benefits of these kinds of awards. So usually what these kinds of awards entail are mentorship, professional development. They're also highly purposeful and specialized, right? So for DAAD, they're looking for sophomores and juniors in STEM. They're looking for folks who are interested in an international research experience, et cetera, et cetera. This is not just, hey, we're going to give you money and just go to Germany and do what you want, right? It's highly specialized and highly purposeful. And so that also makes it competitive. And that's why we exist, to support these kinds of applications. So if you haven't worked with us before, welcome. We have a pretty decent staff on our team. And depending on which program you apply for, you'll work with an advisor. So if you're interested in DOD Rise, you and I will be working very closely together. I'm the primary advisor for that program. So anything that kind of comes up, you are welcome to send me an email. We'll work together. Think of us as like your personal trainer for these kinds of awards. If you're interested in other programs, there's a couple other programs that are STEM specific that are really popular with our students. The Goldwater Scholarship is one of them, if you haven't heard of it. We won't go over that today, but maybe write a note if you're interested in doing research or PhD level work in the future. It does provide a scholarship for that. Dr. Kyle Knox, who's the our dean and director of the office, works primarily with Goldwater. And Dr. Mitch Hobza works primarily with graduate students or rising seniors who are interested in the NSF GRFP. Again, these are all nationally competitive scholarships that are under our purview. So if you're thinking about, hey, I'm interested in doing some more rigorous STEM research, I might be thinking about going to graduate school after my undergrad. These are all things that are, on the menu and available to you as you apply. And obviously, we are here too to help you navigate these systems and awards and processes all the while. So before we get into the good stuff of DOD Rise, I just want to point you to our website, onsa.asu.edu. The scholarships that I mentioned, including DOD, are all listed on our scholarship website. So if you go up to the top left-hand corner, you'll see a scholarship section, and you can look at the programs that we work with. There's about 70 programs that we advise on, which is pretty awesome. All of our upcoming events, it's a one-stop shop. So definitely bookmark our website if you can. And then as you're working through your data application, bookmarking this is the easiest way to also figure out how to make an appointment with an advisor. So on the right-hand side, you'll see advising, make an appointment, and it'll bring you to a drop down that says DOD Rise, right? And you can kind of go from there. But definitely check out our website if you've never heard of us before, if you're interested in applying to things like DOD Rise and other STEM related scholarships. We have a lot. And we have a lot of non-STEM related programs and scholarships as well. So we get some really cool crossover of students who just are in general open to international fellowships and scholarships. Okay, so let's get into DOD Rise. As we work through, I'll be working through some frequently asked questions. Feel free to throw your questions in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. Just know that, as I'm working through the presentation today, I might go through them. Okay. I might actually talk about them later on. And if there's any ones that we haven't addressed at the end, we'll make sure to do that. Okay. So DOD Rise. It's a prestigious summer research internship in Germany. Okay. They're looking for sophomore and junior undergraduate students. The biggest thing when they say sophomore and junior undergraduates, they mean your graduation year, not by credits. That's like the first question that I often get. So if you are a freshman currently or first year, and you just have a ton of credits from AP and dual enrollment, unfortunately, that does not count. Okay. So they're looking for folks who are going to be graduating spring 2027, spring 2028 or fall 2026. Basically, you need to have a semester, at least a semester, back on campus once you complete your DOD Rise to be eligible. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that as part of the program, you apply to up to 3 internships. There's a whole big internship database. You can apply up to 3 listed internships, and you get matched with one. So you'll only ever get matched with one. But if you do, you'll be working with a doctoral student and receive mentorship. So, very similar to what kind of we do here at ASU. There might be a research lab, you have a principal investigator, and then you might have like a PhD student or a candidate who's working with the PI. And so you would be working with both of those people just at a German research institute, which is pretty awesome. So the minimum that you can do the DOD Rise if you're selected is 10 weeks minimum, 3 months maximum, and anytime after May 15th. So May 15th is the earliest start date. I believe the ASU fall semester typically starts around August 15th. For US citizens, you can stay in Germany for a maximum of 3 months and not need a visa. So that's why they have that 3 month cutoff. If you're an international student currently enrolled at ASU, you can also apply to DAAD Rise, but it does require getting a visa for Germany and working that out. If you end up getting awarded DAAD Rise in the spring, our office works with you. We'll work with, um, I think it's ISSC to also help make sure that your visa stuff is good to go if you win and decide to go to Germany and you're an international student. And so each year they award about 300 scholarships each year. That number fluctuates. It's anywhere from 300 to 400, and it's completely funded by the German government, which is pretty cool. So the German government said, "Hey, we're really excited to host, budding international researchers. We want people to come to Germany. We want to host them, and it's a big ambassadorial program." Okay. So I mentioned all of this. US and non-US citizens are eligible, sophomore or junior by graduation year, minimum 3.25 GPA, although I usually recommend having a 3.5 or higher, partially because the way they match you is based off of GPA. So that's one of the first things that they consider. I do get a lot of students who will apply and win, whose GPA is anywhere from 3.5 to 4.0 unweighted. Again, it's not going to mean that if you have a 3.4 that you shouldn't apply, but that's just something to keep in mind that sometimes, the higher your GPA, the better chances it will give you. But it doesn't guarantee whether you'll get in or not. And so your major needs to be in STEM. That's a non-negotiable for DAAD. Needs to be in biology, chemistry, physics, earth science, engineering, or closely related field. So psychology is a related field. If you are involved in neuroscience projects within psych, for example, that's completely eligible. I also get a lot of sustainability majors actually who apply every year because there's a lot of projects related to field work, zoology, climate change, etc., all of which kind of overlap with sustainability as well. Okay. So, like I said, they have a big internship list that's available. So, on the right-hand side, this is a screen grab of what the portal actually looks like. In order to look at the available internships, you have to open up an application. So that's the first thing that you'll need to do, and I'll provide a link in just a moment. But you'll see that they'll just have a big list of internships. They'll have the title. And so part of the first step to seeing, if you're eligible and if you want to apply is, okay, so what kind of internships are out there? All of the internships vary by location, the field of study, and the kind of technical skills preferred. So there are some internships that say, no special requirements, no general lab experience, just come, we're going to train you. Other ones might state a specific preference for, let's say, a computer language model or, um, you know, anything, right? Particularly with computer science, they might want some experience with LLMs, but it just depends. The cool thing about DAAD too is that just because you're one major doesn't mean you have to apply to projects in that major. So let's say you're interested in AI as a CS major, but there's at least 100 projects that use AI that aren't necessarily listed as computer science, right? There's a couple of really cool physics projects that use AI. There's a couple of zoology and ecology projects that also use AI. So if you're wanting to expand your repertoire in some ways, you can really keep an open mind for DOD because a lot of the internships know that they're going to train you to some extent. And so this is just a really great opportunity, not only to be working full time, doing a full time research internship, but also, you're living in Germany. So it's kind of hard to complain about that. I put at the bottom a couple of key dates that I want y'all to keep in mind, particularly. So the deadline, meaning the drop dead deadline for everyone to submit their materials and make sure their application is good to go is November 30th this year, 3 p.m. AZ time. I believe that's midnight German time. Okay. You'll notice though that November 30th is very, very close to the Thanksgiving break and the holiday, which I believe this year is the 26th. Obviously, Germany doesn't consider that because they don't celebrate Thanksgiving. But we have an earlier deadline, which is the last day for intakes. That means for those who are interested in applying to ASU, applying to DAAD Rise through the ASU campus process, that means you get access to our resources, to advising, to cover letter review for your application, all of that stuff. You got to make an intake with me by November 7th. That's a Friday. My calendar is open for those who want to do an intake. There's a lot of spots open currently. As they fill up, I'll open up a few more. Right. We get a high volume of students who are interested in applying to this program every year. I believe last year I worked with about 150 ASU students to kind of give you an idea. So it's a lot of folks who are wanting to apply and who are wanting feedback from myself and all of the resources. So the earlier you can get an intake, the better off it'll be. The reason why we have this earlier cutoff for intakes, not because we want to make your life harder, but because the application does require a letter of recommendation. And so it's really important to do an intake, get onboarded, get all of that stuff so that you guys can come up with we'll come up with a game plan for you so that you know who you're going to ask for your recommender and all of that stuff. As a professional courtesy, even if you want to submit an application on November 29th, which is your prerogative, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you want to do that, that's professionally, I wouldn't encourage that for your recommender's sake, right? You want to give them enough time to write you a really nice letter. And that will only increase your odds for success. So in terms of perks, honestly, I don't have to sell DAAD Rise that hard. Our students love it. Our ASU students do phenomenally well at it. No German language skills are required, which is great. If you're interested in German or you speak German, that's great. It's an added bonus. It's not required. To other thing is you're getting practical work experience. I say it's a win-win. I know STEM majors don't always get a lot of opportunities to study abroad in the traditional sense because y'all's coursework are really intense and very strict. You can't just take a semester off. So this is like the program. If you're interested in an international experience, and you want to do research, then it's one of the few programs. A lot of people ask, you know, are there any other programs like this? And to my knowledge, the answer is no, right? It is it's just an awesome program. I've been doing this for 8 years and I love it. I love working with it. So as part of the package, it's fully funded. You'll get a monthly stipend of €1,000. You'll get health insurance, airfare reimbursement, so they'll cover your cost of airfare. And they also have a July, what do they call it? They have a conference in July in Heidelberg that they give you an additional stipend as well, which is pretty cool. So it's enough to do a comfortable student lifestyle as well. So the application, in terms of what it requires, it's not actually terribly difficult, I would say, but it does require a little bit of planning ahead. Okay, so if you're thinking about applying this cycle, what it requires, an official transcript, and yes, it has to be an official transcript ordered from my ASU. They're looking for a resume or a CV. Either one is fine. Typically, our STEM students have a resume version, and we have some tips and tricks and stuff too. If you want to extend your resume for your German audience, you can do that. The letter of recommendation, this trips up a lot of folks. The application only requires one letter of rec, which is great, right? That's not too bad. A lot of programs ask for two or three. But the recommendation letter has to come from a PhD in a STEM field. So that's the kicker. For a lot of second year students, that can pose an issue, especially if you've primarily taken large lecture courses that are taught by graduate students or TAs. So the one exception to that is that, let's say you've been working in a lab and the graduate student knows you best, but it's still, run by a PI who has a PhD. Co-signed letters are accepted. So if you have a letter that's written by a graduate student, signed by the graduate student, and signed by the PI as a co-signed letter, and everyone agrees that that works, your PI agrees to that, then you're good to go. That counts. Unfortunately, it should come from a PhD in a STEM field. So if you're thinking about a letter of recommendation from like a human event teacher, your Spanish teacher, whatever, a humanities teacher, unfortunately, that's not going to do much, right? That's not going to work for DAAD because they really want someone who can comment on your ability and your potential to undertake an international STEM research project, which is why they want it to be in a STEM field. Um, Briggs is asking a great question. Is psychology considered a STEM professor in this case? And if they are a PI in your lab, yes. Briggs, I would say in that case, yes, psychology is considered STEM, particularly if it's kind of in like the neuroscience or clinical realm. So that would be fine. The other thing that the application requires are cover letters. So you can apply to a maximum of 3 internships. And each internship requires a separate cover letter. So this is not like a one size fits all to whom it may concern kind of cover letter. It's not an easy apply on LinkedIn kind of cover letter. The majority of your work after you apply, after you find the 3 internships that you want to apply for, will be writing these cover letters. And to be honest, that's the bulk of the work that you and I would be doing together is looking through your cover letters, getting some feedback, strategizing, okay, what works here, what works there, and just making sure that they're the strongest that they can be. They also ask for an enrollment verification form. This is something that you get from the ASU registrar. Again, this is all of this kind of bureaucratic paperwork stuff that's required is on our Canvas shell. I'll talk about that in a moment. And they also ask for a list of courses, which is literally just a list, a Word document of all the courses you've taken while at ASU. So again, the recommendation letter and the 3 cover letters are really where the bulk of your work will be for this application. Things like transcripts, enrollment verification. These are things that you can order from your My ASU and check off your list pretty quickly. Oh, I also got a message about PhD math professor. The PhD for math, yes, does count for a letter of rec, which is great. For the recommendation by November 9th, by November 7th, no, you do not need the recommendation submitted by November 7th. The November 7th deadline for our office is just for an intake. So you just need to have that first meeting with me, a DOD Rise intake by November 7th. Again, because then that gives you at least a month, because November 7th is a Friday. You'll get like a week to, add your recommender, do all of these things, and then it'll be Thanksgiving, and then it's the deadline. So November 7th is just for completing an intake and committing to apply. Okay, so this is where we're at in terms of timeline. Application opened last week, October 15th. We have info sessions. We've had it, this week. We have 6 weeks basically until the start, and then November 30th, the application closes. So you're working with like a 6 week timeline. I know that's a pretty tight turnaround. It's probably the shortest turnaround that we work with in our office. But that means that we got to be making decisions pretty fast, right? Determining eligibility, checking out internships. And this is all the fun stuff too, is looking at the types of internships, which is really fun. And then at that point, we'll be working together to draft your cover letters and request a letter of recommendation from a faculty member. Now, after November 30th, it takes a couple of months for them to get their stuff together. It's actually a pretty quick turnaround. In January, the PhD students will rank applicants based off of the stack that they get. Anytime between February and March, applicants will be informed as selected, waitlisted, or non-select. So you should find out around March whether or not you've been selected, and then we'll begin our pre-departure process and we'll support you with all of those details. If you are waitlisted, we'll also still be working with you in the off chance that you get pulled up. But, we get a lot of students who are applying to different programs, different internship offers. I know you guys are juggling a lot of things. You're thinking about your summer and what that's going to look like. So DOD informs you fairly early on in that process. Okay. So in terms of timeline and next steps, one thing that you'll want to do, confirm your eligibility. Obviously today, we're at step 1 today, basically. Discuss required materials. We'll be hearing from our alumni today, and any sort of general FAQ, we'll get that covered. Okay, so after today's meeting, really your goal is to find internships that suit your skills and interests, and you can apply up to a max of 3. Again, I'll be adding some of these links in the chat shortly as well. Once you open up an app, again, you have to open up an application in order to see the available internships, right? You can, this link right here, register an application. I'll put it in the chat. You'll be able to search available internships. You'll be able to narrow them, familiarize yourself with the DAAD Rise portal, and then we'll do an intake. So I really prefer folks to have an idea of what kind of internship, at least to have opened up an application and start poking around before doing the intake. So how this looks, it'll be a virtual meeting. Typically, I host intakes in small group settings, so it's around 4 students can apply. Sorry, 4 students can sign up for the same spot at a time. And in this kind of small group intake, we'll talk a little bit like, hey, what's your major? What are your research interests? We'll look at the internships that you flagged. We'll talk about points of comparison, right? If you have a project that you love in Berlin and another one in Munich, like what's the difference? We'll kind of talk about that and brainstorm as a group. And we'll also strategize any other questions you may have related to things like letters of rec. And then after that point, it will be draft review. So there's basically a 2-step process for DAAD with our office, which is we make it as simple as possible. Step 1 is an intake. Step 2 is a draft review. So once you start writing your cover letters for these internships that you're applying for, you can also sign up for draft reviews with our office. Again, they're very similar to the intake where they're small group meetings where we will swap drafts of cover letters as Google Docs. You'll always get comments from me in addition to comments from your peers. And it's a great way to meet other applicants, read others' cover letters, and kind of get inspiration from one another, and just in general improve your writing and editing skills. And so feel free to, snap a photo of this if you need. The timeline, again, 6 weeks is pretty quick, but if you're really motivated to spend the summer in Germany and have a blast, then, you'll be able to make these decisions pretty quickly. And so I mentioned one of the benefits of applying through our office when you're applying to DAAD Rise through ASU is the resources, right? Here's an example of what I mean by that. So anyone who is applying to DAAD Rise this cycle, who's eligible, and who completes an intake with me, I automatically add them to this Canvas shell. So all of the questions related to like, how do I, get the certificate of enrollment? How do I order an official transcript? Tips and tricks for your cover letters. I have examples on the Canvas shell, and kind of starting points to write the cover letters. That's all here, but you got to do an intake with me because it's very, very important that I track which ASU students are applying and which ones are not. The other reason why I can't stress enough that you got to work with our office and why it's beneficial. Certainly, you could apply on your own if you want to. You could. I don't know why you'd want to. It's already a lonely world out there. We have a great group, a great cohort of students who are applying. It's a cool way to meet other students and just generally improve your odds of success. Those who do not work with our office tend to have a higher risk of their application not being accepted, largely because of clerical errors, like for bureaucratic documents that are uploaded the wrong way and, letters of recommendation going crazy, that sort of thing. So if we don't work together, it's very hard for me to advocate on your behalf for DAAD, right? That's the benefit of our office. We do a lot of work with these foundations. I know the foundation rep at DAAD Rise. If there's anything funky, I can be here to support your application and clarify anything. If we don't work together, it's very difficult for me to support your application if something goes awry. So that's why I say, please make a note to do an intake with me and take advantage of our cover letter review workshops and meetings and stuff because they're awesome. They're really, really helpful. And ASU students do phenomenally well in DAAD Rise. That's something I can't say enough. We had 34 ASU grantees in 2024, 18 in 2025. To put in context for the 2024 cohort, I think they only gave like 350 or 340 total scholarships, and 34 of those were ASU students. There's 10% of the cohort was ASU students, right? And those are all students that worked with our office. So I just want to kind of point that out, of like if you're on the fence about whether or not to apply, you should. If you're eligible and you're motivated, you have a good shot. Um, Mira asked in the chat, are there certain internships that are harder to get into or more selective? Yes, that's a great question. So, we don't know when we're looking at internships how many applicants are going to apply, right? So you should ultimately choose internships that are interesting, that fit your strengths, and all of that jazz. I will say in our intake, we also talk about this. Larger cities tend to be more competitive. So programs like Berlin, Munich, Frankfurt, right, any of those big cities within Germany tend to have high numbers of applications. If you are interested in aerospace or mechanical engineering, the DLR, which is basically the German version of NASA, also very competitive because everyone wants to have an internship there. Makes sense. If you're open to exploring internships anywhere, I strongly recommend you look at Google Maps when you're looking at the internship to see where they are in Germany. Smaller to medium-sized cities, I always tell students to consider because one, they tend to be undersubscribed. Less people apply to those internships, so you're more likely to get matched. Also, the cost of living is much lower. So your stipend goes a little bit farther. Germany has an amazing train system, so it's very easy to get around regardless of your city size. And so that's something to just keep in mind if you're open to anywhere. Consider some of the medium to small cities. Now, if your heart is set on cancer research in Berlin, I'm not going to stop you. You can totally throw your hat in the ring for it, but you don't want to choose all three projects in Berlin. That's not something that I would recommend. And again, we get in this a little bit more um, in our intakes and stuff. So when we meet, we can talk in more detail about internships that interest you and how that might play out from like a competitive standpoint. SACE also asks, how are applicants ranked? Applicants are typically ranked first by GPA, and in the DAAD FAQ, they go through that. They typically rank it first by GPA, and then they'll do it by cover letter, and the PhD will rank it. So there's the PhD separately ranks all of their applications, and then DAAD ranks it by GPA, and then they'll cross-reference based off of that. So only one person can get matched per internship. And so just keep in mind, that's why I say, even though you could technically only apply to one internship if you wanted to, I highly recommend that you max out. You apply to 3 different internships because you're more likely to get it. All right, so now let's shift over to the stories and all the fun part, ultimately. We have 2 alumni who are with us today. We have Leah and Aniston. And so I want to invite them to just introduce themselves real quick. Tell us a little bit about where you studied, what you were studying, and yeah, just give us like the spiel. Aniston, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I totally can. Yeah, so for my, I guess, DAAD internship, I was based in Tübingen, Germany. It's a like another small college town in Germany. It's like in between Frankfurt and Munich. I did like a plant immunology project, and that's kind of where my interest lied at the time. Like when I was applying, I was really interested in doing like different plant research, and so it was just like one of the ones that had come up that was like on the molecular like biology side of things because there's like she said, like Kay said, there's like a lot of ecology projects, and that was not really the side of things I was interested in. So that kind of worked out for me, and so that was kind of why I applied to it in the first place. Um, yeah, is there anything else I should say about it?
No, yeah, we'll stop there. That's perfect. Yeah. And Leah, how about you? Where did you study and what were you studying on your Dodd Rise?
Hi, can you see me or is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, so I was sitting in Darmstadt, which like is also really close to Frankfurt. It's kind of a small college town as well. And also I was doing a biology project, which is not like it's kind of funny that there's two biology projects here because I feel like that's not very typical. But um yeah, my it was more on the like medical biology side, so I was interested in melanoma and how it differentiates. So that was what I studied. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, interesting to have two biology because I feel like engineering takes up a lot of the projects. Computer science also takes up a lot of the projects. But I'm curious to just hear in general, tell us about your city a little bit. What was the work-life balance like? Yeah, start with us on your like day to day. How did you feel that that was?
I go first, or is that okay? Okay. Yeah, so my work-life balance was, I would say, pretty good. I know like Germany, like typically like culturally, their work-life balance is really good, so I'm pretty sure most interns kind of had that experience. Most weekends I was traveling, if I'm being honest. And there's a lot of long weekends in the month of June. So I was pretty much out of town for those long weekends. Yeah, I would pretty much get out of work around like 4 p.m. and have the rest of the day to myself so I could even do some like touristy type things or just relax or spend some time with like some people in my lab or like some other interns that were in my city. We'd sometimes get together after work and just like get dinner or something, which was really fun. But yeah, I would say it was really good. It was not like super stressful. Like I think going in, I was a little worried that I would not have like so much time to travel. It would be more like work all the time, but there was a really good balance between being able to like have a good lab experience and learn like a lot of information, new things, but also get to like enjoy the culture and all that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I had a really similar experience, Leah. The work-life balance there, like it's nothing like we talked about here. Like they really prioritize that there, which is really awesome. And it was kind of like I feel like everyone kind of had a different experience and like what their schedules look like. Like I kind of just went in whenever like my PhD student was in, and she was like an early bird, so I would be in from like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. But then have like the entire rest of the day off, which was nice because like, I got off so early. Yeah, and I would spend like a lot of the days like there were a couple other interns in my town too, and so like we would go get dinner after, or we would go like sit by the river. Yeah, and it was really awesome. Again with like the June thing too, like there were a lot of German holidays. And so during the summer, you at least like my PhD student was taking the German holidays off, and so I would get them off too. So that's like same thing with the long weekends. Um, but yeah, and I spent a lot of time traveling on the weekends. And by the end of it, I won't shut up about how much I loved the town that I was in, because by the end of it, I just like didn't even want to travel anymore, and I wanted to stay there just because I loved it so much. But yeah, and I would get like Saturday, Sunday off like normal, but it felt like plenty of time because the train system. And so it was super easy to just like get off work on a Friday at 3 and take a train somewhere random and then be gone for the weekend. But yeah, like great work-life balance. I worked pretty independently also. So like it was like a lot of the time I would go in and my PhD student would just check in the morning and then I would just be on my own the rest of the day, which was really nice. And so I really did like get the full breadth of the experience, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm curious to hear about your previous research experience you had before going. How were your PhD students? Like, how involved were they in training you? Like, what was your experience beforehand, and how do you think that kind of played out in your internship?
Yeah, so I had some research experience prior to the summer. So I had done an internship after my freshman year, and then I've also like worked in a lab at ASU like throughout college or throughout my undergraduate years. So I had had some research experience going in, which was I would say really helpful because I kind of knew a little bit more information going in. I would say more than what my like PhD professor was ex or PhD student was expecting. So it was kind of nice, not being like super new to everything, but I wouldn't like say that that was necessarily required. I like met a lot of students who were really like new to lab things, and your PhD student will like is really helpful most of the time, I would say. And like they're also students, so I feel like that kind of helps. Like they're really understanding for the most part. So yeah, sorry, what was the rest of the question? I like
Previous research experience and like how that played out in your lab training and how your PhD trained you and everything.
yeah, so also like my PhD student at the beginning of my internship was very like hands-on, kind of like every day we would be learning something, but closer to the end when I had my own project, it was a lot more independent once I like knew what I was doing and what I had to do to finish my like final project. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of the same for me. Like I guess going into it, I had probably like by the time that the summer rolled around, I had about like a year of like lab experience because I was in a lab at ASU. But when I applied, I had basically no experience. Like I think I had been in a research lab for like maybe 2 months when I actually applied to DAAD. So going into it, I really didn't have too much experience other than like classroom experience. But I think even like after having like prior research experience and like going into it and starting my project, it still felt like I was learning everything new just because like it's so different working in a different like lab environment. And also like for me, it's like all the chemicals are in German and like everything is in like different places. And so it felt like I had to relearn everything anyways. And yeah, my PhD student was really hands-on at the very beginning too. Like it was really easy to like ask questions because like she expected me to not know very much. And I think that's kind of the expectation of most of the PhD students, like in like that are enrolled, I guess, in the program. And yeah, I had plenty of friends who like went into it and that like was their first experience in a lab ever. And so I thought that my prior experience was helpful, but still, nonetheless, I was a little bit blank-minded going in.
Yeah, that's a great point because previous research experience is less about the actual technical thing that you do and your ability to work with others and solve problems. That's what I've kind of noticed in like the cover letters, right? Is that a lot of time it's very rare that you'll stumble upon one of the internships for DOD that's like a one-to-one match with what you're doing here currently at ASU or a research project that you've done in class and like what you'd be doing in Germany. So most of the time you're trying to make some connections of like, well, I have these skills over here, but this is what I learned about working independently, right, for Aniston. So that might be something that with the PhD students know, hey, we're going to train you anyways. We're looking for someone who can think on their feet, who can work in a team, then that is should give a lot of confidence to a lot of folks who maybe don't have research experience, who are maybe sophomores or trying to get into research. Because I know that is a big concern with a lot of second years is like, I have no research experience. I've only taken classes. Is that enough? And the answer is like, yeah, yeah, we get a lot of students who do quite well. Curious to know what you guys are up to now that post DOD. I'd love to know how did your DOD experience prepare you for other opportunities, particular for things like graduate study or any of your courseworks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I just finished my internship this summer, so it's not been super long, but I'm kind of hoping to look into some other research internships for this summer. So I think that having some like kind of unique research compared to just like experience that's, within ASU or at like a university within America, like kind of different would hopefully like set me apart. But I haven't really applied to anywhere yet, so I guess we'll see. But yeah.
Yeah, so I did my internship last summer, so 2024, and then I graduated undergrad in May. And so I'm doing the plus one program at ASU, so I'm still at ASU, and then I'll graduate in May again with like my master's. Um, but yeah, I guess it was really helpful in like establishing that like I can be an independent researcher, especially going into my like master's year. And also like knowing that I can work in a different lab environment. I think that was like a really big thing for me because I do want to get my PhD. And so like going into that and like knowing that I'm flexible in like other environments was really helpful and like made me feel more confident because I'll be applying to PhDs in the coming year. But I'm applying to like other fellowships for the next year. I'm going to take a year off and then do my PhD. So I actually just applied to Fulbright, which is another thing that ONSA helps advise with. So I went through the advising office again, like pretty hardcore for the Fulbright application. But it was nice to have that under my belt because it was like I actually applied to a Fulbright in Germany. And it was nice to be like, oh, I've done research in Germany and I really enjoyed the culture there. And, like 3 months wasn't enough time. But yeah, so I think it's definitely shaped how I've kind of set my trajectory because I didn't think that I would be like so keen to, I guess, do like international research or like do international fellowships. And after going, like I had nothing, like I knew nothing about Germany beforehand and like had no ulterior motives to be like, oh, I really want to go there and that's why I'm doing this internship. But after leaving, I love Germany so much and it was so awesome. And so I really feel like it's kind of pushing me in the direction of like wanting to be more involved on like an international scale.
Yeah, I thought of something when Anderson was talking that I thought I could maybe just add really quick. So with my experience, when I came back to like my lab at ASU, and I was like talking to my PI here, I think that talking about my experience really like solidified like trust that I could work on an independent project. And so that's opened up a lot of like opportunities within my lab to like grow and work on my honors thesis as well. So I would say that it's been really nice to have DAAD kind of like solidify that I can do independent research and that I can be in like an unfamiliar environment and still like make something out of it. So that's the last thing I wanted to add. Yeah.
No, that's all great points. And I'm glad you brought that up. One, the preparation for, classes and lab work when you return, opening up doors, that's a huge thing. I've had a lot of like return alumni who go on to apply to graduate programs and some like really competitive ones like Caltech, Yale, MIT, like big programs, right? And across the board, they said like when they were doing their interviews for these graduate programs, they were always asked about their Dodd Rise experience. That was like the number one thing that was kind of shining on their resume. And again, they're very accomplished people, very successful, being considered in a equally successful group of candidates. And that was something that really shone as different is doing this international research experience, which I think says a lot. And yes, it does prepare you for other fellowship experiences, whether or not you're planning on doing them in this moment. I will say for the past, I think 4 or 5 years, we've had at least one Dodd Rise scholar also win a Goldwater scholarship. And so that's $7,500 for juniors in STEM who want to go on and do a PhD. This is just like a flat 7,500 bucks for top undergraduate researchers. And again, it just goes to show we got a lot of folks who are in NSF, Fulbright. If you want to keep doing your research abroad or go back to Germany, there's a lot of really cool opportunities out there. And it may not be on your radar yet, but it might be after this kind of program. And even if you decide to stay within the US for graduate school, it's a great option to just make you really competitive and even for industry as well. It's a great thing to bring up in things like industry interviews when they're asking you, like, tell me about a time when you had to work on a problem or you're working in an international team. You can say, oh, yeah, I was working on a team that only spoke German. Right? And I had to make it work, which is sometimes the case for Dodd. A lot of the labs are international, and so English will be the main language, but not always, and so your lab mates may be German and you might be the odd person out. So there are all these kinds of like situations that being an international researcher prepare you for real life, for life after undergrad, which is supremely helpful. So I want to ask our panelists too, what are your advice for students applying and choosing their internships? I mean, you guys were in their shoes not too long ago, so especially you, Leah, this was literally you last year. So what's your advice for folks? Any kind of key takeaways from your application?
Yeah, so when I was applying, I was like stalking the website with all of the different like internship opportunities. Try to really find a project that you're super interested in. I think that'll like really translate to your application. And also try to find internships where like maybe your skills are like slightly aligned. I don't think you necessarily have to meet like all of the requirements. I know I didn't. But I think trying to find a project that you have a little bit of experience in can kind of help if you have like interviews or something like that. But yeah, I think doing a lot of research on like the topic also can help making sure that you're informed on what you're applying to and that you're passionate about what you're applying to, obviously.
Yeah, I would probably say the same thing. I think that's kind of what drove me because I was like, I don't want to spend 3 months somewhere and like not be enjoying the work that I'm doing. So I do think finding something that like sounds like something you'd be interested in or that you'd be passionate about like really does translate, especially when you're filling out those like little cover letters and stuff. I think they can tell when they're reading it whether or not you're interested in their work. Um, yeah, and then I guess I mean I would say maybe peak at the cities. Like I don't think I found any that were like when I was trying to decide between like whatever filled my third spot, whatever I might have avoided like some of the larger cities if I had something that felt tied to me. I think my top three did end up being three pretty small cities. But yeah, I mean I think probably project is most important. I think location wise, a lot of the German towns are really pretty. A lot of the small ones are really awesome. I didn't expect mine to like work out so well, I guess. I kind of knew nothing about it going into it. But yeah, so project based, I'd probably say would be the most important.
Yeah, and all of this. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Leah.
Sorry, one more thing. I think that also don't be shy to add things on your resume that aren't necessarily like research related, because I remember I was like talking to my PhD student at the end of my internship, and he was like, "Oh, like it was really interesting seeing all the different things that you have in your like." I had some volunteer experience on there and like some other things, and I think that makes you like stand out as a person. Like, I mean, the person that's like looking at your application is also a PhD student; they're also a person, so. I think that you don't necessarily need to be like, oh, I need to only add like my research stuff and talk about research. Like, no, feel free to also talk about things that you're passionate about outside of research. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And if you did a cool project as part of your classes or your classwork, like include that because it doesn't show up on your transcript and they wouldn't know unless you tell them. So that's a really good point. And part of it too is like these PhD students, like this, they spend so much of their time thinking about this particular project. I know I'm a PhD candidate myself, so I spend a lot of time thinking about my project. And so, yeah, I think we often get caught up in just applying in our own to-do list that we forget that someone else is actually on the other side. And so that's a huge benefit that you have to your application that you can take advantage of. Like you can nerd out with them, right? And so all of the research that you do when you're looking at an internship in the cities, all of that goes into your cover letter and helps you really tailor it to that project and it really appeal to them. And so that is the benefit. And so, some people are like, oh man, I wish I could just do a one size fits all. I was like, no, the benefit to this kind of program is that you get to tailor your response. And again, in our workshops and our draft reviews and stuff like that, we get into the weeds a little bit more about that. And that's ultimately what's going to help you stand out as well. Any other thoughts, Aniston and Leah, like, advice on, how to prioritize this application during a busy semester? How did you handle that sort of stuff? Any sort of like general advice for the good of the group?
I would say with prioritizing your application, I think that did the application already open like recently or
Yep, last
yeah,
week.
I remember I like printed out a bunch of like the applications that I was interested in. I had them like the physical papers with me so that anytime I had a break between class or something, I'd like read those like little project summaries and be like, okay, I'm interested in this one. I'm definitely gonna apply. And definitely go to like all of the ONSA like application like sessions, like the resume one. I think I went to the other like the cover letter review as well. So trying to get all of those, just get a lot of like feedback. I think, you're not gonna like make one draft and then submit that. I think you need to have like multiple drafts and have multiple people look it over. Yeah, that's what I would say.
I guess the comments that I would kind of make of like prioritizing stuff is like I would say really take advantage of the Canvas shell. It's like so awesome. And like one of the things that was on there that I would have never thought of was like to send like the PhD students emails beforehand and just be like, hey, I'm interested, like let's chat a little bit. Because I really think that made a difference, like especially my cover letters, like knowing, like seeing that I've sent an email and like reached out to them and talked to them already. I think it kind of made my cover letter stand out and just being like, hey, like even in my cover letters, I was like, I just want to reintroduce myself, like blah blah blah. And it's just like stuff like that that's hiding in the Canvas shell that is like really great for an application because it really like breaks down every step of the process. And I think that made everything feel like really manageable when doing my application, was like working through the shell.
Yeah, the Canvas shell, that's my baby. I've worked on that really hard to make it like, small pieces so that bit by bit you guys can just work through it and work through your application because yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. You guys are studying for midterms, finals. It's gonna come, the application period comes during like pretty much the very end of the semester, which is really crazy. And so it is possible to get it done. It's just you got to prioritize it and, set smaller hoops for you to jump through. And part of that is just doing the intake and getting off to the races. So to open up an application, you want to go to DAAD.de/rise Germany, that link. You'll want to look at those internships that best fit your field of study and your career goals. In our intake, we'll be looking at some of the options that you pull up. So that's why I say it's really good to take a look at the internship database as well. When you're ready, you can make a DOD intake appointment with me. The easiest way to do that is just directly through our ONSA website. So onsa.asu.edu, and on the right-hand side it says make an appointment, and you'll be able to see the DOD Rise intake drop down. And then after that point, we'll get you on the Canvas shell. Again, that Canvas shell is only for folks who do an intake with me by November 7th. So, get it in gear, put it on your calendar, set an alert, whatever you need to do so that we can get you going because I'm excited to work with you on your application and see what internships you find. So it'll look like this on our website when you see Dodd Rise intake, and you'll see all of my available appointments as well. So feel free, if there's anything else that comes up, feel free to email me. My email is catherine.salgado@asu.edu. Again, the application goes by real fast, so we're excited to start and get going on it. We'll hang around a little bit in the room if there's any lingering questions, and we'll go from there. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you apply to Dodd Rise this cycle and we can work together. Otherwise, have a great rest of your evening. And thank you to our alumni panel as well for all of their sage advice and wisdom, as always. Yes. Question about link to application. And let me throw it in the chat. Go. Okay. Stace asks, the Dodd Rise internship database hasn't been working for me. Stace, if you're comfortable unmuting, what has been going on with the portal for you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have my like Dodd Rise like ID. And then